All right, today we're cracking open a really fascinating document. It's called The Arts of War, the COVID Virus. Now, our job here isn't to fact-check it. Instead, we're going to do something else. We're going to unpack the story it's trying to tell. We're going to see how it builds its narrative piece by piece. Okay, let's just dive right in.
Right from the jump, this document sets a really dramatic scene. I mean, look at this. It's framing the whole thing not as just a health crisis, but as some kind of global chess match. You can literally see money and power being moved around on the board. This one image tells you everything you need to know. This is a story about players, strategy, and incredibly high stakes.
So, think of this document as a kind of dossier, an investigation file. And our goal is to just follow the trail of breadcrumbs it lays out. And, like any good mystery, it kicks off with the one question that was on everybody's mind.
This is it, right? The big one. The fundamental question that the whole world was asking. And this document, man, it doesn't wait around. It jumps straight into giving an answer, or really a series of answers that lead to its own very specific conclusion.
So to build its case, the document starts by laying out two different origin stories. It brings up a really popular theory, but then it immediately shoots it down to make way for another one. It's basically guiding you, the reader, down a specific path from page 1. And here are those two stories, right next to each other. On one side, you have the bat soups from the Wuhan market idea. But then, boom, the document just says, nope, studies showed that wasn't true. And instead, it claims all the evidence pointed directly to the Wuhan laboratory. Just like that, the narrative has a location and a potential villain. And then it drops in two really key details to flesh this out. First, it calls the place a Level 4 lab, a term that's meant to sound serious, and we'll see why in a second. Second, it gives it a backstory, claiming this lab has been messing with bat viruses since way back in 2003. The point it's making is clear. This isn't just some random lab. This is a high-risk operation that's been going on for a long time.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The document doesn't just stay focused on Wuhan. Nope. The so-called investigation immediately goes global, and it starts connecting a whole network of these high-security labs across different countries.
But before we trace that network, the document makes sure you know what's at stake. So what is a Level 4 lab? Well, in its own words, it's a maximum security lab to deal with a deadly virus. I mean, that phrase alone is designed to establish a sense of extreme danger.
And this pyramid from the document illustrates that perfectly. You've got BSL-1 down at the bottom, pretty low risk stuff. But as you go up, the danger level just cranks higher and higher. And right at the very peak, the highest point of risk, you've got BSL-4. We're talking agents like Ebola. And this document places the Wuhan lab right in that top-tier category.
And if the pyramid wasn't enough, check out this diagram. It really drives the point home. You see airtight seals, decontamination showers, guys in positive pressure suits. The visual message is screaming at you. These places are basically fortresses built to hold the most dangerous things on Earth.
Okay, so once that sense of danger is set, the document starts laying out its world map. It begins in Wuhan, of course, then it hops over to Manitoba, Canada, with a pretty wild claim that guests with a deadly virus were sent to China. And finally, it pulls in a lab over in Moscow, saying it has some kind of secret deal with China. You can see the web starting to take shape. But a story isn't just about places on a map. It's about people. So, the next part of this document switches gears from geography to genealogy, introducing a whole cast of characters that it claims are tied into this international lab network.
And the story of these connections starts in a kind of strange place. It introduces us to an astronomer named William and his 4 kids, who are shown using these really simple clip art images. It's a funny choice, right? It feels like it's weaving this little storybook family into a massive global conspiracy.
And this table here really lays out all the connections. You've got William's daughter, Melina, who apparently works at that lab in Canada. His son, Henry, is married to Irina, who works at Lab 4 in Moscow. Then you have this other couple, Jane and Peter. She's in a Texas lab while her husband, Peter, is working directly in China. All of a sudden, every key location now has a person attached to it.
The story then zooms in hard on one of these characters in particular, Peter. And his introduction is where the whole tone of the document shifts. It goes from this kind of amateur investigation to something that feels a lot more like a spy thriller.
And just look at the pictures the document uses for him. No more clip art for Peter. He gets these shadowy, spy movie figures in trench coats and hats. The implication is crystal clear. This is a man who operates in secret.
And this little montage ends by putting our mystery man right at the center of the story's main location. The document flat out says, Peter works in China with Dr. Zhu. So all the threads, the different labs, the family members, they all lead to this one guy in Wuhan.
And this is where it all comes together. The labs, the global network, this cast of characters, it's all been the setup for the document's main event, its biggest and most direct accusation. This is the why behind the whole story.
And here's the claim, stated as plainly as possible, that the USA is sponsoring the Wuhan lab with a lot of money. This huge accusation is what sets the stage for the climax, where it's going to start naming names. But before it does, the document pulls our focus back to the lead scientist at the lab. It calls Dr. Zhu the Bat Doctor, an expert in bat viruses and something it calls humanized mice. Now that typically means lab mice that have been genetically modified with human genes or tissues to make them better models for human diseases. It's a detail that's clearly meant to establish some very specific and maybe a little scary expertise at this lab.
And this is it. This is the climax of the entire document, all wrapped up in one quote. It accuses two people, a Dr. Farce and our mystery man Peter, of providing financial support for the development of a virus in China. I mean, that is the central accusation, the bombshell claim that this whole thing has been building towards.
So ultimately, the entire story, all the labs, the family ties, the spy pictures, it was all constructed to support this single idea, which is shown here with this image of cash. The narrative it's selling is that international money was the engine for this dangerous research.
The document's ending is like a rapid-fire list of final claims. First, it really ups the ante, saying a new biological weapon was discovered. Then, after a quick mention of masks and social distancing, it pivots to this really curious economic point, that the countries that were hit the hardest were actually seeing their economies get better by 2021. It just leaves that hanging there, letting you connect the dots yourself.
So what are we left with here? Not a pile of verified facts, but a very carefully built story of global intrigue and secret funding. You know, the most important question this document raises might not be whether any of its claims are true. Maybe the real question is this. In the middle of a massive crisis, what does our deep human need to find a story, any story, with a clear plot and clear villains, what does that tell us about ourselves and about how we cope with a world that often just doesn't make any sense?